Hello, sentient beings of this unfortunate planet Earth. Ash Manson with you here today. Just got a couple things I wanted to talk about with you guys. We are in the aftermath of the DNC and the RNC a little over a month ago. This is one of the time periods where the normies start to engage in politics. You know, the people that only really plug in like every 2 to 4 years. This is the time of year where they start to pay attention and they watch the conventions and they watch the speeches, and it really influences like how they feel about certain political candidates more than, you know, there's just a higher level of political engagement than usual. So I think it's important to talk about, especially since like the last video that I made was like very positive as far as like the Democratic Party goes, and I am nothing if not fair, and I'm going to pour a little bit of cold water on that after hearing Kamala Harris's speech. But I'm also going to qualify like the fact that, spoiler alert, I didn't like it very much, and additional spoiler alert, it wasn't really for me. Like, I'm not the target audience. But let's first talk a little bit about the RNC. But let's talk a little bit. Let's have a more of a meta conversation about Republican psychology. Because when I was watching the RNC, and I didn't watch all of it, I probably watched roughly half of it. But you know, the things that people were talking about online, I at least made sure that I was abreast of the situation. And there was like a prevailing narrative in the RNC that basically like, the Democrats, they are ruining this country, and you must elect Orange Man because he is going to fix it all with, I don't know, deportations and stuff like that. We're going to have the cleanest air for how? We're going to cut prices in half. Again, how? Like there wasn't really much in the way of policy proposal, just kind of like these people, the criminals, the Democrats, they are all messing the world up beyond comprehension. And if you elect Orange Man, everything is magically going to be fixed. Again, they don't really tell you how, they just have faith in Orange Man. But I think that really kind of hints at just like Republican psychology in general. It's all the other's fault. The other that doesn't, you know, that doesn't think like you. Like I can't even count how many times, generally speaking, online, but sometimes in real life too, like a conservative friend finds out that I am not a conservative and no longer wants to associate with me in any way, shape, or form. And that's just really freaking weird, because like my ideology is basically like, I want you to have health care. I don't want you to be in crippling debt. I want you to be able to go to college if you can. I want the price of living to be lower for all of you. Like, I want a higher standard of living for everyone. And they are so offended by me not being a Republican that they're just like, yeah, F you, lib. And mind you, I am not a liberal. I am not a Democrat. I am not either one of those, because liberalism is a right-wing philosophy and the Democratic Party is a right-wing party. But in the United States, you have two right-wing parties, and the difference between the two, the biggest difference between the two, and I'll say the Republican Party is way further to the right to the Democratic Party, but the really important thing is the trajectory. As I said in the last video, the Democratic Party wants to move the country ever so slowly to the global center, whereas the Republican Party wants to very swiftly bring the furthest right-wing country in the world even further to the right. It's like almost the entirety of Republican ideology that the other is bad. The other is either people like me who aren't Republicans, or it's the criminals, the Mexicans on the other side of the border, like all the teachers that are trying to indoctrinate your kids, all the evils of the world. Nothing is ever the way that they portray it. But again, their entire ideology is built on lazily assigning narratives to other people and hating them for these narratives, these false narratives that they establish. Whereas when I was watching the DNC, like, a lot of the speeches were about hope, about, like, they say we're not going back to a time when women didn't have control over their own bodies. Well, you don't have to go back, we're already there. But rhetorically, that's the point that they're making. We're not going back. We're not going back to, a time before Social Security and Medicare, which were hard-fought wins on the left. The Republicans want to gut Social Security and Medicare. They want to raise the age. They want to, they want to make it sustainable, is what they say. But in reality, they want to cut it, right? Like, there was just such a different tone in the DNC. There were people there that I absolutely love, like Bernie Sanders, like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but there are also some ghouls that I absolutely can't stand, like Hillary Clinton, like Chuck Schumer, like Nancy Pelosi, like Jim Clyburn. Like, it just kind of gives you a sense of the really wide tent that the Democrats fall under, the very, very large coalition that the Democratic Party entails. But Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have actually, in their campaign speeches, they have been speaking positively about, policy proposals such as gun control, and I was happy to see that gun control was such a big theme at the RNC. They're talking about the child tax credit, which was huge as far as cutting child poverty and all that. They were talking about paid family and medical leave and all that. They were talking about some really good things on the trail, and then Kamala goes up there to give her speech, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to make sure America has a lethal fighting force, and that we give Israel everything they need to protect themselves against those dirty terrorists, Hamas, and all that. And we need to make sure that, police and public education are well funded. And she basically did the typical liberal, neoliberal, tack to the center kind of BS that I have been so expecting from the Democratic Party for so long. And I'm trying to look at this as clear-eyed as possible because Joe Biden would be saying the same nonsense. Let's be real about it. If he could form a sentence, that's probably the policy platform, to the extent that there was any policy, and there wasn't a ton in Kamala's speech. That's probably what he would have articulated, and it was probably a strategic move to tack to the center. And I hate that framing because, again, the center between two right-wing parties is still pretty goddamn right-wing. But it was disappointing. It was very disappointing to hear Kamala default to all that lazy nonsense. And it really, had me feeling deflated. Now, if this is a ploy to, seem more palatable to all the conservative Democrats to get elected and then get into office and, do some good stuff, and that's kind of, Biden's Build Back Better agenda, to the extent that he actually supported it, and I'm a little bit skeptical if he really wanted to get all of that through. But it was a pretty good domestic agenda. Some of the things that Biden was able to accomplish domestically, especially the hiring Lena Khan as a labor secretary, very positive developments as far as union and antitrust goes, dipping his toe in student loan cancellation. He didn't do nearly enough. The Supreme Court didn't allow him to do much, but he didn't he kept on talking about using the Higher Education Act to further cancel some student loan debt, and that never really came to fruition, despite the fact that the president really clearly states in that Higher Education Act that the president has the unilateral authority to cancel all student debt if he wanted to, and he just didn't. So, Biden, and I will give Biden credit for the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I will take all that credit away for his, unequivocal support of the genocide in Gaza. Biden has been a mixed bag. It is very hard to believe that Kamala Harris could be any worse than Joe Biden. Biden has an old dogmatic allegiance to Israel. It seems like his idea that this is so ridiculous what he says, that not a Jew in the world would be safe if it wasn't for Israel. Never mind the fact that Jews in America are way more safe in the United States because of the reckless policy of the Netanyahu regime. It's all encased in this old dogmatic adherence to American exceptionalism and Israel as this bastion of democracy in the Middle East, in which they are not. But let's move past Biden, because I want to talk about Harris, because this was the first time that she really did that whole triangulation, all that typical neoliberal nonsense. It really makes you wonder what kind of president that she is going to be. And Tim Walz's speech was much better. It was way better. But at the same time, Tim Walz as a white man has the luxury of being more policy based, being more emotional, being more compassionate, because there's a section of the voting demographic that is going to see a woman and is going to default to all these lazy tropes about you can't have a woman run this country because she's going to be on her period and she's going to be too emotional, all the lazy shit. So maybe Kamala felt like she had to come out strong. That's not strength. But say all that lazy nonsense to appear strong, to cater to these outdated fears. But whatever. All I'm gonna say, I didn't like the speech. I didn't like it at all. But it wasn't for me. I hope this is the last time we see this kind of kowtowing to conservative framework from Kamala Harris, but only time will tell. But I'm gonna keep an eye out. That's about it for now. Until next time, revel in what you are, my friends.